Welcome back to the Art of Football 365. This is episode 62. We're finally back. It's been a 3-week break. We just got done, wrapped up school. Time for a little break here. I know we're both excited for that. It's been a while since we sat down and actually had time to record. Glad that school is done. It was a long and tiring semester, so I'm glad that we get to focus on this for a little bit and do what we enjoy. But before that, Gronk spike the subscribe button for us. Leave a like, leave a comment, continually communicate with us, give us feedback. We appreciate it very much, whether it's on social media or our videos itself. Check out our two sponsors, Driftless Quality Wear and Bacher Auto Group. They support us, so support them. And today what we're going to be talking about is a topic that I kind of had some resonating with this past week that I feel like is a topic that I want to touch on, especially with the audience that we have. And it's how to give purpose to the athlete. How do us in the world in general give purpose to athletes outside of them making money, whether it's in the NFL, high school athletes not being able to get image and likeness based off their name, or college athletes as well, which is you've started to see the implementation of that within college football or college sports in general. So I think that's very important. But the reason I want to touch on this is this week I put out a series of tweets based on a quote from Dez Bryant, and it was in his podcast he did with I Am Athlete, which is Brandon Marshall, Ocho Cinco, Channing, and Fred Taylor. Yeah. So that podcast that they did, there was a part around the 21-minute mark that I quoted from Dez Bryant that kind of stuck out to me and made me realize what athletes have going right now is not right. Like, what's going on within the athletic world isn't correct. And I'm going to read this quote, and I think a lot of people will begin to agree with what we're saying throughout this and kind of give purpose to an athlete in general. But what Dez Bryant said was, I can't do what you do, B. Marsh. I can't do what you do, Ocho. I can't do what you do, Fred. And I can't do what you do, Channing. I can do what I do. And if we all got something that can fit that common goal, we can really go as far as we want to. Now, to me, throughout them series of tweets, I asked myself, like, what does that mean? How is it important? What is this truly, like, how does this resonate within the athletic world in general? How is this relevant to the Patrick Mahomes of the world? How is this relevant to Tom Brady? Just the NFL greats, quarterbacks, receivers, running backs, whatever it is. How does this relate to them? And the primary reason that I got out of all of this is that guys like Tom Brady, guys like Patrick Mahomes, they're signing million dollar deals and bonuses and everything like that with different brands such as Jordan, Nike, Adidas. And they're not making the full amount of money based on their image and likeness because it's going through a different channel. So what do you kind of think, like, based on that initial?
No, I mean, that was a lot right there, but I think one of the first initial things that I thought of, because we've listened to this podcast, I don't know how many times it's been out for months now, and there's a lot of good tidbits in that, but the more athletes climb in their levels and experience and all that, the more they're at a disadvantage, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
When people reach to the professional level, no matter what sport it is, everything's more it's under a microscope. Everything's just tougher on an athlete. And like you said, it shouldn't be that way. We should be able to make this transition easier for them, kind of treat them more as a normal person and that type of stuff. But there's a lot of different avenues to this, and I think there's such a fine line with this because this can go two ways. It can also be about the person individually, their qualities, individual characteristics, and also who they are in the field as an athlete.
Yeah.
And they both got to go together and gel into this. And the common thing of why this is successful only in certain teams and organizations is winning. That's what this comes from and why people have success, because football has the biggest roster in sports. I mean, that's just how it is. And you have so many people and walks of life coming together. And you have to have all that intertwined for that to be the product. But they're all different, as Dez says to everybody else. But you got to have all that come together in order to have success and relationship built with people off the field to go along with the success on the field.
Which I think is huge. Like you said, have a relationship built off the field.
And that's the difference between the the field player and the athlete on the field.
It is. And I was thinking earlier this week as well, there's something that crossed my mind that athletes do not have. I think you've seen a lot of athletes unfortunately lose their life. Demaryius Thomas being one. Rest in peace, Demaryius Thomas. But you've seen a lot of athletes, which Des mentioned in this podcast, that there's not really a common answer as to why they experience death at an early age, which CTE, anxiety, depression, and I think that's all kind of collectively related to why death has occurred at an early age. Um, but my problem with that is, what is the NFL and these top industries, NBA, MLB, what are these professional organizations truly doing for the athlete, especially athletes after they retire? There's nothing really being done to kind of try and prevent or fix what's been going on within the athletic world of early death, anxiety, depression, struggles with your mental health, the onslaught of mental illness in general. But what I was thinking was, there is no sanctuary that athletes truly have. Like, I had this idea that, what if within the athletic industry there was buildings for each organization, such as for example the NFL. Imagine there was this building, maybe not owned by the NFL, but someone had a building that was a sanctuary for these players, retired, current, kind of like what they do with veterans, which obviously it's a whole different thing with what veterans deal with and what sports players deal with. But what if there was a sanctuary to where current retired players could come hang out, talk sports, do what they do off the field, hang out together. That's their sanctuary, their home away from home. To have that and to be able to build ideas off of each other and kind of find a purpose at, like, with life after sports, I think that would be massive, because I don't think anyone truly has a sanctuary for these athletes that gives them the opportunity to have a purpose. So my example of that would be like, with Dez talking about this on the podcast, imagine a sanctuary where Dez is in the sanctuary with other players, and he's able to bounce his ideas, his brand, his purpose off to these other current athletes, these other retired athletes, and then they build together. They put all their ideas collectively together and they utilize each other. And that's the biggest thing I think you don't see within the athletic world now, is no one's helping each other. It's almost kind of like an individual game with a lot of these athletes. Is, I think some of them feel like they simply just don't have anyone in their corner, or these athletes don't feel like they have each other's back. But that's the only way progress moves forward, is if these athletes choose to have each other's back. You can go ahead and chime in on that.
No, I know that over these last couple of years, with more and more people coming out with their stories with Hayden Hurst, the connection with Dak Prescott. We've talked about that numerous times on the show. But I just was talking to you about this before we recorded this, and it was You Never Know podcast from Mike Stud, an artist, rapper, singer, whatever. But he interviewed Christian Kirk because they both live in Arizona, because Christian Kirk plays for the Cardinals. And he said now this is the first year I know that he started to do it, but it's a weekly thing. The NFL hires out mental health professionals that are trained and licensed and come in for like a mental training course. I forgot what he called it, assessment. But it's nothing negative, but it's just to sharpen your mentals and make sure everything's on the right path aside from football.
Mm-hmm.
That's just the first of that. There needs to be that mandated, or not mandated, but having it everywhere and available at a lot more times than just when people are at the facilities and that type of stuff. But I know they're working on that. It's a priority, but everything's playing catch up now because this is way too long, and what it hasn't turned into anything until people are finally talking about it. But when I talked about one of my first points earlier was the athletes, as they get older and their levels and experience are more at a disadvantage, it's so much to do with social media. I see that, people can talk about all they want. I heard Christian Kirk talk about this too, that you can say all you want. Those guys, social media is integrating their lives. Everybody's checking it and they're seeing the good and the bad, whether you say you don't or not. If you're on social media, you're seeing people comment to you, and the millions of people saying bad stuff to the athletes, in and out, all that type of stuff. You're human at the end of the day. And I know it's something that you can't control on social media because it's the nature of it, and that's the beast of it and how bad it is at certain times. But I know those are the outside things that players, as they get famous, have to deal with, and it creates more noise physically and mentally in their life that it shouldn't be there, as they're already having their stresses with their actual sport they're got going on.
Yeah, no, I agree 100% with what you guys say. I like the reference with Christian Kirk. I think it plays a huge factor into what's going on within the athletic world, I think that's huge for progress to finally start. And I like what you said, everyone's playing catch up with this. Like that's what the biggest issue is.
Because you're like, oh crap, it's an issue, and now it's a
How do we get there?
pandemic in its own form.
It is.
And now it's taken by storm because it takes one or two athletes, big famous people, to do it. And now, hey, let's talk about it. And there's more stuff being done each day, which it needs to be. But now that's when you keep going with it. You don't stop the push, right? When stuff's just happening.
And that's the biggest thing right there is I think Dez individually is the big advocate for that. I think he's one of the first athletes to ever finally
consistently
utilize his platform and not only bring awareness but bring action to it. Do things for these athletes. And I think that's what the athletes need. They need a voice, but not only a voice, they need a voice who utilizes action and actually goes through with their agenda and pushes their ideas out and allows a collective unit of networking to occur. But my thought process on how do we give athletes a purpose? How do we give them the idea in their head that life after sports, it's okay, and there's going to be other things out there, that the grass is greener on the other side type thing. What I personally believe is, this is something that I've struggled with forever, is trying to understand the word purpose and what the action means within life itself. But for me, imagine that each individual person, this kind of relates back to Dez's quote with, I can't do what you do, you can't do what I do, all that. We all do different things. Obviously, there's similarities between everything, but we all do a uniquely different thing. So imagine, in Gannon's perspective, imagine he's got 20 doors in front of him, and I got 10 doors in front of me. Now, for me, I feel like I've 100% found my purpose, which is what I'm doing right now. It's building a brand. It's podcasting. It's spreading mental health awareness. It's interviewing other people. I feel like I found that purpose. So for me in life, I feel like I only had to knock down 10 doors, and behind door number 10, I found that purpose, which is what I'm doing now. Like I said, that's the purpose. Now, it could be different for Gannon, whereas he's 10 more doors than me because he knocked down door number 10 and that purpose wasn't there yet. So what you have to do as an athlete or as a person in general is continue to knock down those doors till you open that door and find the correct purpose there. Now, you could knock down door number 10 like I did and think you found your purpose, and then years down the road, you're like, I need something new. I need a switch up. I need change. So keep knocking down doors. If you keep knocking down those doors, the purpose will come through. It will shine a light onto you. And you'll know. Trust me, you'll know when you find that purpose, whether you're an athlete or not. But obviously, this is athletically directed. So in that manner, understand that if things aren't going right on the field, or if things are going great on the field, and you understand that one day it's going to come to an end, and you got to have something there, whether you have a degree or not, in college, whatever it is, you got to keep knocking down those doors and find your purpose. And that's where I think what Dez is saying comes in huge, because when these athletes finish up, they wrap up their career, some of them have no idea what to do. Some of them have no idea where to place their money. All they're getting is advice from financial agents or just an agent in general. So where does the fine line come along where athletes get together, work together as a collective unit, and decide from there, we're not going to allow the past to repeat itself, because that's what it is. It's one big, there was a tweet that was in response to the series of tweets that I put out last night. I was like, it's one big recycle bin. And I think it can be a recycle bin in a good way and a recycle bin in a bad way. And what I mean by that is the good way, if we push these new ideas, we understand athletes can build their own brand, their own image and likeness off of uniqueness based on their athletic abilities and talent on and off the field. If we push that, continually push that, and that idea gets brought out in front of these athletes, that can be recycled on and on and on and on for future generations, which is why this is important to us, because we're big advocates for the youth. We want youth sports to be changed. We want that idea of youth sports to be altered in general, where they see what's happening and they think it's better than what has occurred in the past. Whereas it could be recycled in a bad way, because if we allow it to stay the same, it's just going to keep on and on and on again, just like the other idea of it. So I think it's flipped back and forth. So if we decide to continually push those ideas, I think the recycle bin effect could be massive.
I think also the purpose, I also like to call it your why. I think that you can kind of break that down into smaller whys to create your ultimate purpose, your smaller whys
Yeah.
that can be specifically, directed to certain different aspects in your life. But for a majority of football players, the NFL players, we're going to keep talking about here, is to go 110% every week, go as hard as they can for their family, get their money, make sure everybody's set up and their immediate family, kids and all that are set up for generational wealth down the line.
Mm-hmm.
But then when they hit 30, 35, it could even be in their mid to late 20s, whenever that last day is done on the playing field. What's their purpose? What's their why for life after football? And that's what a lot of this stuff, why Dez is doing this with the personal corner is so huge, because you're going to want to get athletes involved in so many different other things than just football when they're in their careers. So the more and more athletes are getting on board with the NFTs and with the personal corner, it's huge because they got a purpose. They got something to do to take up their time. That, hey, when football steps away, it's not going to be your number one choice, but there's something else there to fill your purpose, to fill your void. And that can be anything, not just the NFTs, but to get the athletes involved in more stuff while they're still playing. So things are set up when they get done, so they have more hobbies and interests to keep themselves occupied. And in this scenario with NFTs, make more money and earn stuff off of their likeness, because they can pretty much do anything you want with an NFT and make it look like yourself. So,
well, I don't want to cut you off, but there's one thing that you said that was very important. I don't know if you caught it in the episode with Dez or not, but what they talked about was when they bring on these athletes within Personal Corner, whether it's with the NFTs or the brand itself, there's no contract. There's not a contract there holding these athletes down.
It's solely on their own power, on their own time, and their own money.
Their own image and likeness.
What else could be better than that?
Exactly. And whether it's you being a part
they're
of Personal
in full control, and they won't. They will never have that until they get done playing, because they're having a team oversee them, their boss, all that.
And full control.
They can run all this on their own.
Full control. That word, them two words right there are huge, because that's what athletes have lacked. Like, that's what a lot of athletes.
And that's what they want.
Yes, and a lot of people don't understand that having full control being lacked within the athletic world is terrifying, because these athletes are almost like a pawn. They're a pawn out there in a large business. It's just like a worker getting sucked up.
It's so tough, because you look at you could say, hey, people could use their platform, their whatever you want to say it, what they did in their career, all that. But not everybody has the same careers like Shaq or Peyton Manning, which can use their name. Everybody knows who they are across the world, and can get on the commercials, TV scenes, all that type of stuff, and make their money. But that's a very few individuals in all the sports across the board. For the no-name people, don't want to say that like that, but compared to other famous athletes on certain teams, there needs to be a better way for all former players that are retired, whether they were an all-pro Hall of Famer or they were on the special teams for their entire career. And certain stuff like Personal Corner and the NFTs, the principles and all that, sets it up for nobody. There's no discrimination against how much money you have and how much you don't have.
For sure. And I think it comes back to understanding that
it's evening the playing field is what that point was. And that's what 100%. Needs to be done.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. And I think the biggest thing to understand is if athletes unite together, bring themselves together, and ultimately grow together, it will only elevate you. You're not going to get necessarily scammed by another athlete. They're there for you. You're there for them. It's a vice versa effect. I need athletes to understand that concept, that if you grow your brand and you be yourself, just be unique, then you will grow. You will grow, and you will find that purpose with what you're doing. And whether it's something that you think you'll be doing the rest of your life or not, you will have an everlasting purpose, because you'll continually keep knocking down those doors and grasping at that concept, which I think is massive. But now I kind of want to switch this. And since Gannon's a current athlete at the college level, how do we give you a purpose outside of making money off image and likeness or records, rings, whatever it is? How does the world give you a purpose in general? What's your why? Like, what are we doing with sports?
I think it was the biggest thing is the motivation for school. And I see that is there for me, has been imposed on me since I was little with my parents and all that. But I also see teammates and all that in certain situations, whether they could control it or not, the school does not always come first for certain individuals. And I think there needs to be more of a why. Like, why is the degree? Why are the grades? Why are you passing this? Why are you doing this on top of your sports and all your activities? Why is all that correlating into you becoming a better person down the road? Yeah. Because not everybody can see that or understand that right now, but there needs to be more incentives in my opinion, for people getting good grades and doing well in school. I saw Ole Miss, obviously SEC, they got money. They're pairing their athletes based on if they meet a certain GPA requirement each semester, on top of likeness and all the other stuff they're getting from third party people. But they're paying guys to get good grades, which is kind of an old thing. You get $5, if you get an A from your grandma or your mom back in the day. But it's the same principle as that. That just makes you a more well-rounded individual, whether the athletic ability is there or not. And that goes so much farther with the team, with the camaraderie, all that type of stuff. Because you already know the actual sports part's going to be there. The talent's already there. You made it to a school professional team because you're good. That's not in question. But it's how much can you guys go as a team and as a unit and move on to win the ultimate thing, win the national championship. And that starts off the field. I just think off the field characteristics for people and athletes are just really important.
Okay, so now that we understand your why, your purpose as to the point of being in sports, the point of being an athlete, what's the plan of action that we take as a podcast? What is our plan of action for beginning to help these athletes? How do we as a brand, as a podcast, as an influencing type of organization, how do we begin to help these athletes, whether they're professionals or high school athletes or college athletes? Where do we start?
That's a good question because I don't know if I can specifically, name one example off the top of my head, but as you touched on before, it's a communication of athletes that's going to come down to anything getting moved forward in the future with all this of not one level, of not one sport, of not one gender, of all that type of stuff coming together and just solely focusing on how we can better athletes when their playing careers are done. And I
Yeah.
don't there's a lot of different things that I know professional leagues and teams already do with like the veteran, if you're in the 4 years, you get the benefits from the NFL when you're retired and all that. But I think so much more for me and somebody from the podcast helping, it's got to take former and people with bigger status, more money, somebody that has a platform like a Des Bryant that he's already busting it and doing all that. But there's so many more former players that have money, former really legends, no matter what sport it is, that could speak up and use their money and use their platform because people will listen to them before they listen to like you or me. That's just how it is. But there needs to be accountability from that because I also know schools do that with alumni, with donations and them trying to get more people involved coming back to school and all that. But there's no right answer to it, but I think the older people, the elderly people that used to play in these sports and all this, that have the money and have already been through it and have either gone through success or have faced issues when they got done playing, could give the best insight and the best information on how to move forward with that, in
So
my opinion.
yeah. So here's what I say for our podcast. Like you mentioned, obviously we don't have the status of some individuals
Yeah.
who have made money, who have done successful things. This is the start for us. This is where we begin. um, but regardless of our status, I feel like where we start is by telling you as an athlete to grow with us. Don't try to grow on your own. Grow with other people. Lift other people up, and in turn you'll be lifted up. I think what athletes need to understand in general is there's more out there for you than you truly believe and think. There's people out there that truly genuinely care, which I agree. There's definitely going to be people out there that are trying to take advantage of you, whether it's within money, whether it's autographs, whether it's free memorabilia, whether it's just the fact that someone got a message back from Patrick Mahomes on Instagram. Some people like to just show that off, but other people genuinely are interested in what you're doing, what you're invested in, where you're learning, how you're learning, who you're learning with. A lot of people want to reap those benefits with you. I don't think they won't necessarily want to take advantage of you, but there is people out there like that. So I think what it comes down to is how do we as a podcast help athletes? How do athletes help us? We work together, which has been the common theme within this podcast, this episode we've done today, is work together with us. We'll work together with you. And the more ideas that are thrown into this pot, the better chances that this pot's going to
Yeah.
overflow with a generation full of ideas on how to make that recycle bin good, how to continually refresh good ideas for the future of athletes. Because with our podcast, it's huge within the youth world. We want to impact the youth community within sports because they see and they look up to these older athletes. They look up to guys in high school. They look up to guys in college. They look up to guys in the NFL. they look up to those people because they want to be like them. So imagine if a Patrick Mahomes, who a lot of people, especially in the younger crowd right now, look at and want to be him. They want to be him. They want to see him. They want to meet him. They want to watch him play, whatever it is. So imagine if a Patrick Mahomes came out utilizing his platform and said, us athletes need to get together. We need to work together more. We need to check in on each other, and we need to unite together to elevate each other and utilize the power of knowledge. If they can collectively do that, and then a younger kid sees Mahomes do that, it inspires them. It inspires them to work until they understand purpose. They understand how to collectively work together. And then the future, the sky's the limit on where this could take people, because then the recycle bin effect will be good. It will be good. It won't be bad. The system will be broken. Everything will start fresh. And the NFL, other businesses such as Jordan, Nike, Adidas, and major other companies won't be able to take advantage of athletes anymore because they know how to progress on their own. They know how to use their own image and likeness to benefit themselves. That's about all I have for this episode, Gannon. If you have any other final comments.
There's not a whole lot. That was kind of like with my point with the older generation. That's what I was trying to get to. You kind of summarize it and finish it up, just the motivation, the showing, hey, here, this is what it is. This is how I'm doing it. And I'm making money out of this. Do this because it's going to set yourself up better. That type of thing. But like the reason for what I said before that and what Bryce said is the only way this is going to happen is communication among athletes and athletes only. It's just not going to happen unless athletes come together, because nobody else can specifically know what and how you got to where you are and what you're doing, because athletes are unique. They're one of a kind people. And unless you play a sport or have played a sport, you don't understand that. So the only way this is going to get moved forward with a bigger movement, a bigger agendas for people across all leagues and all facets of life is athletes talking to athletes.
110%. And I think the last thing that I really have to say with that is within our show, our platform, our status in general, we may not be verified. We may not be special, but in general, what we are doing is unique because other people can't do what we do. Just like DB said, they can't do what we do and we can't do what you do. We all do it differently, so let's work together to unite and elevate each other. So I think our goal with this is, if you see this episode, contact us, grow with us, learn with us. Let's spread ideas, new knowledge. How do we work with athletes? How do we work with younger athletes? And
ask questions.
Yeah. And let's generate a whole bunch of ideas and let's start this plan. Let's put this into full effect and let's get athletes in the right spot where they belong, and let's allow the line of communication to be better. So that's all we have with this episode. We hope you enjoyed this episode. We'll be back next week with episode 63. But until then, Gronk spike the subscribe button.